Well, let's get started. We're gonna split Jeremiah 13 in two, so we'll hit the first half of it today, and then we will continue in the second half of it tomorrow. And good morning also to Kelly and to Kelly in Independence, Missouri, and to Lori and Pat. By the way, I don't know. There's no overt evidence of it other than the smell and humidity this morning. But it rained in the middle of the night last night. Like it was pouring. It was amazing. So that's nice. Anyway, good morning to Cher. It's good to have you on here this morning. All right. Well, let's jump in here to Jeremiah 13. And so now what we're going to begin to see in Jeremiah 13 is the first of a number of physical acts. They're basically like they're symbolic actions now that Jeremiah is going to be instructed to employ. Let's give the people a word picture. Let's the Lord teaches in parables. He gives us he's a communicator that comes to us with a language that we can understand, and so he paints pictures. And so he now begins to employ some visuals so that we can begin to understand that there can be a more vivid understanding of what the Lord is trying to communicate. So in verse 1, Jeremiah writes, "Thus Adonai said to me, go and buy yourself a linen waistband and put it around your waist, and do not put it in water. So I got a waistband in keeping with the word of Adonai, and I put it on my waist." Now, when you first read that, that's okay. What's a waistband? It's a loincloth. It's not simply a waistband. This is an undergarment. That would wrap, most likely wrap between your legs. There were some that didn't wrap, but the point of it is it was something that was you would wear for undergirding, for support, and it would cling to you, and it was a very intimate garment. And so it could be made of. There were some that could be made of linen. Some could be made of leather. That sounds awful. But it extended from your waist down and wrapping around your legs to your thighs. And then you would kind of loosen it at night for sleeping. And so the loincloth here functions, the waistband or loincloth is linen. It's to be linen. Linen was valuable. Linen, of course, was a priestly the material used by priests. It was the material that was used in special occasions for your burial shroud. You were wrapped in linen, and so it was valuable. And so Jeremiah is told to go get a linen loincloth, and he's to wear it, and he's not to put it in water. And so that's to basically assure its newness. It's supposed to be clean and pure. There's not supposed to be any damage. So it was to be a clean, dry, freshly purchased linen that was to be placed around his waist, as it were. So he did it. It says so he went and did it. And then verse 3. So, and again, the Lord here doesn't tell him why. Jeremiah doesn't go, well, what's this all about? Can you explain to me why? I don't understand. He does what the Lord instructs him to do. Verse 3, then the word of Adonai came to me a second time, saying, take the waistband, take the loincloth that you bought, which is on your waist, you're wearing it, and get up to Parath or Parata, and hide it there in a cleft of the rock. So I went and hid it at Parath or Parata as Adonai commanded me. So Parah here, this word, it's the ordinary, it's the Hebrew name for the Euphrates River. So if he's going up to the Euphrates River, which would have been basically in Mesopotamia, in Babylon, it's about a 350-mile one-way trip. So that would have, to go round trip there and back, would have taken about 3 to 4 months to complete on foot or by donkey. So there's also a place just a few miles north of Anathoth, which is Jeremiah's hometown, where there's a spring. There was a spring there called it's still there. The modern name is Tel Farah, and it's 6 miles north of Jerusalem. It's 3 miles northeast of Anathoth, and so there's actually a spring that contributes to the water supply in Jerusalem. So it may have been that Jeremiah went to this spring, but it does bear a connection to the Euphrates. So the Euphrates would carry significance because it's the river that's in the land where they will end up in exile. So the very place where the cloth will be ruined that we're going to see is in Euphrates, in exile. Accordingly, the prophet is to put a linen loincloth in a crevice in the rocks. And so this word for crevice is only used in a couple of places, and it's basically a place where people seek refuge, where they seek safety. So that could be part of the imagery as well, kind of a place of perceived safety that provides no safety. You've been running to these places. You've been running because the Lord's going to address later, which we'll probably deal with tomorrow, he's going to later address how they have relied on their alliances. They've tried either relying on Egypt or relying on the Babylonians, relying on the Assyrians, relying on others to help them, that the very place that you've relied on is where you've tried to find refuge, did not serve you in any way. But again, Jeremiah hasn't been told what any of this means. He's just following instructions. Go to this place, and hide. Take that linen cloth, wrap it up, and hide it in a crevice in the rock. So he's okay in obeying the instructions of the Lord. Verse 6, now it came to pass after many days that Adonai said to me, get up, go to Parath, and take the waistband that I commanded you to hide there. So I went to Parath, dug it up, and took the waistband from the place where I had hidden it. But hine, behold, it says to my surprise, but it's behold, look, the waistband, the loincloth was marred. It was a mess, worth nothing at all. And the language worth nothing at all is lo yitzlach lachol, hakol. There was no success, no prospering to it. To all of it, the whole thing, it was a mess. So that would be like an idiom that means it's worthless. What can I do with it? There's nothing prosperous about it, nothing successful about it. It can't be used successfully anymore. This thing that's supposed to cling to me to keep me clean is a filthy mess. So it's no longer going to keep me clean. It's not going to serve its purpose. So again, Jeremiah doesn't know, and now the word of the Lord came to me saying, thus says Adonai, just so. I will mar the pride, the majesty, the pride, the exaltation. The word is gaon, the greatness. I will mar the greatness, the pride of Judah, and the great pride of Jerusalem. So it's a gaon Yerushalayim harav, the majesty of Jerusalem, the great. So the great majesty of Jerusalem. So I'm going to, in the same way that this is a mess, this is what's going to happen to all of Judah and to Jerusalem. So the meaning then, the Lord brings forth this clear meaning that this is an allegory, a picture, a parable for what's the coming exile for Judah. Despite their former closeness to the Lord, as close as a linen loincloth is around its wearer's thighs, that relationship was now ruined. They are dirty, they are polluted, just like this loincloth is. They no longer can serve the purpose at this point that they were intended to. God will ruin the exaltation, the pride of Judah. Verse 10, this wicked people who refuse to Shema, they refuse to hear my words, who walk in the stubbornness and like the strength, the hardness of their own heart, and go after other gods, walk after other gods to serve them, so to worship them, to serve those other gods, and to it says, and to worship hishtachavot, to do obeisance, to bow down. This picture of to curl up and prostrate. That my people, instead of they refuse to hear me. They walk in they're intent in the strength of their own will, their own heart, to go after. They're going after other gods, other gods to serve them, and to humble themselves before those other gods. They'll be my people, this wicked people, this refusing people will be just like this waistband, worth nothing at all, no success, no prospering at all. So there's the same exact language, lo yitzlach lacho. There'll be no success, no prospering to all of them, just like it is with this loincloth. Verse 11, for just as the waistband, as the loincloth clings to a man's waist, so I will make the whole house of Israel and the whole house of Judah cling to me, declares Adonai, to be to me a people, a name, a praise, and the word there is tifarat, a beauty, a glory, and kavod, a glory. But they would not obey. So this word now, so the whole picture the Lord is giving, I mean, it would be, can you imagine? Like, the Lord gives me a prophetic word and tells me to go buy a pack of Hanes, and buy a pair of underwear. This is the picture. This loincloth that the Lord is using. And now there was to be this level of kind of closeness, and the word, so the connection is this word to cling to. And that word to cling to, we've seen throughout the scriptures, and it's a word. Let me see here where I've got dabach means to stick, to cling, to cleave to be joined to be welded to, inseparable. Right? We call them the old ones, whitey tighties. They're to cling, to be. You don't like the visual? It's a biblical visual here, right? That there's a clinging, and it's a very intimate clinging. And the Lord has said, you cling to me, be joined to me, be married to me, cleave to me, hold fast to me. That's another, that word is often translated as hold fast, cling to me. It's basically saying, don't the people understand that their value, the value of who they are, the value of Jerusalem, what makes all of this so great, what makes them so great is their relationship with the Lord. With their connection with Him is the source of their greatness. There's this intimate devotion that He's been calling them to. And there's this picture, this vivid picture of this extremely close personal connection between the Lord and His people, as though He were wearing them near His own flesh, making them an essential part of His daily life. And there are a number of verses where we see this word used in Genesis 2:24. Genesis 2:24, it's a familiar passage. Excuse me real quick. That says, for this reason a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined, dabach, cling to, be welded to, cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Verse in Deuteronomy 4, the word of the Lord comes to His people, and as Moses is going to give this one, this Deuteronomy is like a one sermon, kind of a recap of everything, and he says, you've seen what Adonai did at Baal Peor, for Adonai your God has destroyed from among you everyone who followed Baal Peor. But you who held tight, you who dabach, you clung to, you were welded to the Lord your God, Adonai your God, are alive today, all of you. Key is cling to Him, right? It says it again in Deuteronomy 10, and then 10 verse 20, in Deuteronomy 11 verse 22, and then in Deuteronomy 13:5, Adonai your God you will follow, in Him you will fear, His mitzvot you will keep, to His voice you will shema, and you will serve Him, and to Him you will cling. To Him you will be connected to, you will hold fast to. Deuteronomy 28:60, it's a negative version of cling. basically it's in a couple of different places in Deuteronomy 28, where it's one of the curses that says, because if you don't walk in obedience to the Lord, he'll bring back on you all the diseases of Egypt of which you were afraid, and they will cling to you, and they'll hold fast to you. He calls us at the end of Deuteronomy 30 when he says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And he says, by loving Adonai your God, listening to his voice, like hearing him, and debach, clinging to him, being joined to him, being welded to the Lord, inseparable from him. For he is your life. He is the length of your days, that you may dwell on the land that Adonai swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, to give them. When Joshua was giving his farewell, when he was saying goodbye to everybody, Joshua 23:6, Joshua had been told when he began, chazak, be strong, and he opens up by saying, be very strong to everybody, be resolute. He uses the word chazak, but be very chazak, to keep and to do all that is written in the book of the Torah of Moses, so that you may not turn aside from it to the right or to the left, and not intermingle with these nations who are still remaining among you. Don't mention the names of their gods, or swear by them, or worship them, or bow down to them. Right? So the things that he says, my people have refused. My people have refused to listen to me. My people this wicked people, this refusing to listen people is the language there in Jeremiah. And instead they've gone after walked after the stubbornness of their own hearts, after the strength of their own hearts, worshiping these other gods, bowing down to them. The Lord, here in Joshua, it says, don't mention the names of their gods, or swear by them, or worship them, or bow down to them, but cling to Adonai your God, as you have done to this day. For Adonai has driven out from before you great and mighty nations. As for you, no one remains standing before you to this day. One of you, because of the Lord, one of you can put 1,000 to flight. For Adonai your God, he himself is fighting for you, just as he said to you. For your own sake, therefore, be most mindful to love Adonai your God. Like, there's not a casual nature to loving the Lord your God. It's not a by the way. It's to be central. It's to be intentional, not accidental. For if you ever go back and hold fast to the remnant of these nations that are still remaining among you, if you ever weld yourself to them and intermarry with them, and you associate with them and they with you, know for certain that Adonai your God will no longer drive these nations out from before you. Instead, they will become a snare and a trap for you, a scourge in your sides and thorns in your eyes, until you perish from this good land which Adonai your God has given you. And so the warnings were always very clear, and they were laid out. And the picture was supposed to be cling to the Lord. And so this visual that the Lord has told Jeremiah, go get a nice brand new linen loincloth. And you know how it's supposed to be clean and unmarred, new. And that's what my people were supposed to be, but they tried to hide somewhere else. They tucked themselves for refuge somewhere else. And now they've soiled themselves to at this point, they're a mess. I can't use them. But here in verse 11, here's the beauty, is that the Lord then, his final word is not judgment. His final word is restoration. He says, but just as this waistband clings to a man's waist, so I will make the whole house of Israel and the whole house of Judah cling to me. Like, I will bring that to pass. To be to me a people, a name, a praise, a beauty, and a glory. That was his intention, and that is still his intention. The loincloth has this double symbolism of the coming exile, the dirty loincloth of the public coming exile, but it's also a picture of the way that God will use the exile to remove the arrogance and the pride of people. And God still recalls how he entered into an irrevocable covenant with his people. And so these people will receive an honorable name, to be a beauty to him, to be a glory to him, a praise to him. Despite the fact that this loincloth will be ruined, Adonai's original purpose is not going to be revoked because he's faithful. Verse 12 says, "Moreover, speak this word to them. Thus says Adonai, the God of Israel. Every jug, every wineskin should be filled with wine. And when they say to you, well, don't we know very well that every jug should be filled with wine? Then you will say to them, thus says Adonai, I'm about to fill all the inhabitants of this land, even the kings who sit on David's throne, the Kohanim, the priests, the prophets, and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with drunkenness, and I will smash them against each other, even fathers and sons, says Adonai. I will show no pity, nor regret, nor compassion to keep me from destroying them." So there's this easy instruction. Jeremiah is to say, every wineskin should be filled with wine, to which the people mockingly respond with this sort of insulting, derisive response where they're like, duh, like, of course, it's a wineskin. It's supposed to be filled with wine. That's what it's made for, idiot. That's sort of the tone of the response that's anticipated here. Why is the Lord having Jeremiah do this now? Because we've switched now from a loincloth to the wineskins to be filled with wine. And they're like, yeah, they should be filled with wine. And then the response is given. Basically, the Lord says, yeah, what you don't realize is that you, the inhabitants of the land, are the wineskins. And you're going to be filled up. And then there's, in the way they've done it here in the TLV, and they do it in the NASV as well, goes with the Hebrew, where it says, you will be filled up. And it doesn't tell you with what until the very end of the verse. Kind of leaves you hanging like, what? And he's like, all of you. And he says, kings of it's significant that he mentions those of David's line. I mean, that there is there's going to be discipline for these Davidic kings that have walked in disobedience to the Lord. But God's going to bring the wine of wrath, and it's a frequent image throughout Scripture of God's wrath. But he's going to, on the leaders and the people, he says, I'm going to fill you up. Kings, priests, prophets, all the inhabitants of the land, so that you're going to smash against each other within your own families. And it's going to be a devastating judgment. And the Lord actually says, I will smash against each other, even fathers and sons, says Adonai. And he says, I will show no pity, nor regret, nor compassion to keep me from destroying them. Like he is bringing the full force of his wrath here against those who are walking in the hardness of their hearts. He has made clear in previous passages that he's going to leave a remnant, that he is not going to make a complete end of his people. But what he's about to do, it's actually, the language is quite similar to where he says, I with no pity, no regret, no compassion to deal with destroying them. It's almost exact with the language that's in Deuteronomy chapter 13. It's verse 8, but if we back up verse 6, the Lord had told the people, if your brother, your mother's son, or your daughter, or the wife which you cherish, or your friend who is as your own soul. So this verse, Deuteronomy 13:6, lists all the potential closest relationships. If your sibling, your own child, your wife that you cherish, the friend who is like, it's like your own being. If any of the, I don't care how close they are to you. I don't care how much they cling to you, as it were. If they entice you secretly, saying, let's go serve other gods, whom neither you nor your fathers have known, of the gods of the peoples who are around you, near you or far from you, from one end of the earth to the other end. It says, you shall not yield to him or listen to him. And here's the language, and your eye shall not pity him, nor shall you spare or conceal him. And in the Hebrew, the language is very close to what the Lord has said, how he is now going to deal with these people that have been so close to him. It says, but you shall surely kill him. Your hand shall be the first against him to put him to death, and afterwards the hand of all the people. So you'll stone him to death because he sought to seduce you or entice you from the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. Then all Israel will hear and be afraid and will never again do such a wicked thing among you. And so in God's discipline, his desire is when hearts have come to such a place of hardness that they themselves cannot be softened, will not be softened, refuse to be softened, but there's an intention to walk in the stubbornness of their own heart, then what the Lord will do is allow what happens to them to be a picture of others who are watching, to be an example, so that all of Israel will hear and they will say, I don't want to do that. So that other people will learn from history, right? That's the whole idea. You study history so you learn from it so you don't repeat it. And so God's desire, God will call and call and call and call. But he will not force people to turn. He does not take away your will. He does not take away your ability to make a decision. But the more people set their hearts to go after their own way, it hardens them, it changes them, it makes it where, and we'll see that in what we look at tomorrow, where it seems like they can't even begin to turn around. And so the Lord will allow them at that point, as they've walked off, as they say, no, I'm walking this way, and they're walking to the end of a cliff, and he calls, no, 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 turn around, and they're just walking, no, you will not stop me, you will not, and they walk, and then suddenly they walk off the cliff, and as they're falling, then they start to yell, help, help. And the Lord says, I'm going to allow you to watch that so that you won't walk on that same path. And the picture he gives here of the ruthless, like when he says, I'll show no pity and show no compassion, we actually see that language connected to what basically he's lifting his hand of judgment, so that one who is pitiless, one who has no mercy or compassion, Nebuchadnezzar, is coming in, and the Lord has lifted his hand to let you walk in the desire of your own heart. This is what you asked for. This is what you wanted. This is what you voted for, he says, basically. I told you, I called you, and you said, no, we want a king like the other nations, or we are going to run after our own way. And the Lord says, I'm not having it. And so like in Jeremiah 21, verse 7, it says, then afterwards declares the Lord, I will give over Zedekiah, king of Judah, and his servants and the people, even those who survive in this city from the pestilence. I will give them over to the sword and the famine, into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and into the hand of their foes, and into the hand of those who seek their lives. And speaking of Nebuchadnezzar, and he will strike them down with the edge of the sword. He will not spare them, nor have pity, nor have pity, nor compassion. And so that's where we'll stop today, and because the rest of this now, Jeremiah then will turn and be like, come on, like that's where come on, basically. Will you please listen? Will you please hear the word of the Lord? And again, we got to remember who he's talking to. He's talking to the people of Judah. He's talking to those who come and say, this is the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. And they bring the right words. They come with the right posture. They come with the right sacrifices, but their hearts are not right. And they've conspired to do a thing publicly to show everyone how much they love the Lord, but that in the privacy of their own homes, they're doing their whole thing for the Queen of Heaven, but they're walking in what they want. They're intent on walking in their ways, and they will not. They'll give themselves over to the laws of the land, as it were, with Josiah put, but their hearts are not changed and not turned. Josiah cleansed the land, but their hearts were not cleansed. Josiah humbled his heart, but the people did not follow and humble their hearts. And so the Lord, again, is calling his people. He's reminding us, I told you, cling to me. Cling to me. Hold fast to me. And he still calls us today to cling to him. To be welded to him. That in the midst of everything that goes on, to not cling to anything else. To not cling to the voice of anyone else. To not let our sense of well-being rise and fall based on news cycles, based on our own personal finances, based on our own job circumstances, but that our being would be tied to him, clinging to him, holding fast to him. And so let's quiet our hearts before him and say, search us and know us. And we're going to hold fast to you, Lord, and we want to stay pure. We want to stay clean. We want to stay being who you've called us to be. So, all right. Well, let me wish you all a beautiful day. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a great day.